work with lists in programming, it's important to understand a little bit about how they're stored in memory. In Python, each item in a list has a position in memory that we can access through what's called the index. Indexes always start at 0 and count up by 1 for each item in the list. Here I have a list of colors. Each item in this list has an index, as shown in the comment on the line above. If I want to access an item in a list by its index, I can use square brackets to tell the computer to go to that index location and get the data there. So I can print just the item at index 1 like this. I use my list name with a square bracket and then the index I want to access. Notice that the color at index 1 is green, which is the second color in the list, not the first, because indexes always start at 0. Let's run it and make sure that green prints out. Voila, green prints out. Now, I can go through or iterate through the items in the list using a for loop like this. For color in colors, the color will be my iterator variable and colors is my list name. And now I can print just color, and it will go through the list and print each of the items. Let's comment this one out and run our program with just the loop. Awesome, it printed each of the colors on its own line. But sometimes it's helpful to do this using the index. To do this, I can use the for I in range style of loop, like this. For I in range, and then I need the length of my list, which is colors, and a colon. And now I can set color equal to colors, my list name, and square brackets with the I. Finally, I can print color, not colors, but color. Remember that I is our iterator variable, or our loop variable, and in this case, it will take on the values that represent the index. Here's why. Looking at our code, len is a function that gives me the length of the list, or the number of items in the list, and range creates a collection from 0 up to, but not including the number that len returns, which is 4 in this case because there's 4 items in our list. So this is exactly what we want because these numbers will be the same as the indexes, 0, 1, 2, and 3. So this loop will iterate through all the indexes I need. Now, when I'm using square brackets to access items in a list, I'll often say something like colors at I, to remind me that I'm accessing the item at the index I. So colors at I will access the item at the index of I. And remember, the loop is changing the value of I each time it iterates or starts over. And in this case, I'm storing it into another variable, color. So I'm storing the value at I in my colors list in the variable color. So let's run with the debugger and watch what's happening. First, let's set our breakpoint, then we'll tell the debugger to run. All right, our next line of code to execute will assign the list to the variable colors. Now let's run through each one of these and watch the variables show up in our debugger screen. We can see there's our list, and now we're going to start into our for loop. Notice that I has a value of 0. And color got the value of red. We're back at the top of our for loop, so I is going to change. Notice it goes to 1. And now color is going to go to green. And this will continue on until we've gone through the entire list. Awesome. Now suppose I wanted to display a number next to each of these colors. Let's first just print the index next to the color. I'll use an F string this time. All right, we need I for the index. Then we'll put a little dash and put our color inside of our curly braces. Don't forget your end quote. Okay, now our for loop will print the index next to the color. Let's see how it works. This time I'm going to run without the debugger, because everything we need to see is in our terminal. 0 printed, which is red, and we can check that up here to see 0 is red, 1 is green, 2 is blue, 3 is yellow. Everything printed the way I expected it to. As you can see, this prints the index, which starts at 0. We can't forget that. That gets a little tricky. But now let's change it to start at 1, because humans, unlike computers, like to start counting with 1. So now let's create a new variable for the human count. This is always 1 more than the index. Let's add a variable above the print statement. And we're going to set it equal to I, which is going to represent our index, plus 1. Because humans start at 1, we just need to add 1 to the index. Now let's step through this with the debugger again and see what's happening. Step through our for loop. All right, the first round, we've still got 1 as our human count, I is still 0, and we've got the color red. So as we step through, you can watch that human count is going to stay 1 ahead of the I value. All right, so we saw the variables change in the debugger, but our printout still has 0, 1, 2, 3. So what did we do wrong? Well, we forgot to change what we were printing. We left I in our string that we're printing. So let's change it to human count. All right, this time let's just run it without the debugger. And voila, we've got our human count 1, 2, 3, 4 rather than 0, 1, 2, 3. There are other things we can do using indexes. You can remove a certain item or insert it into a list at a certain place. For example, to remove the color at index 1, you can pop it off the list by using a list method called pop. We can insert things as well, and we'll look at both of these now. First, let's look at pop. Let's pop something out of the list before we run our loop. In order to use pop, we need the name of our list, which is colors. Then we add the pop method, so .pop with parentheses. Now inside the parentheses, we need to tell it which item we need to pop from the list. So we do that by giving it the index we want to pop. Let's pop green out of the list. So that's at index 1, and now let's run our code to see if indeed green disappeared. Now blue is at index 1, but human count 2. Similarly, we can insert at index 2 by using the insert method. This time we need to tell it where to insert and what to insert. So we'll change pop to insert and 1 to 2, then add a new color to store in the list at index 2. So instead of pop, we'll say insert, and this time we'll use index 2 and we'll add the color orange. Now let's run and see what happens. Did orange get inserted to our list or not? Ta-da! Orange did get inserted. Now remember, it's at index 2, but human count 3. As you can see, everything worked the way we wanted it to, and we've learned to use a couple new methods with lists.